was the guy on Joe Rogan, the guy who wrote Tribe? Was he the one who talked about being in the inner city boxing? And you go in there, and it doesn't matter what job you do or what thing you're doing on the outside, you go in there and none of that fucking matters.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really interesting. Because
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what job you're doing or what race you are, how wealthy you are. It's just, can you box?
Yeah.
And are you trying hard to box?
Yeah. So I think that's an interesting point, because if you look at the current, for example, UFC champions or whatever, most of them are international, right? I mean, Habib is also like, he comes from a Muslim background, which and you know, people get behind him regardless of his religion because he's an absolute killer. So they still appreciate the fact that he's part of that community of the MMA community as a whole. And yeah, people have their own favorite fighters, but it doesn't matter. It's what I'm saying. At the end of the day.
Yeah, well, I think it's really cool. Like, even on a much smaller scale, the guys in the there are a lot of guys in the gym who I would never hang out with otherwise. Like, there's firstly, no reason I would meet them, and secondly, I don't know. Like, even my coach, I don't know why I would hang out with him. I don't know like what I would. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how I'd meet him. I don't know what I'd have in common with him. And there are a bunch of people from a load of different religions who you wouldn't meet otherwise. I mean, most of the people I meet tend to be on like nights out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which immediately cuts out a load of the people who I go and do martial arts with. It's like a completely different spectrum of people.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem to correlate to anything at all.
And it's interesting. I guess you can find that in other sports as well, to some extent. But it is definitely like when you're in I think it's a really good thing because it develops you as a person as well, to be able to have that, you know, if you're living in a small town, you might not have the same kind of range of people from backgrounds or whatever you have here in London, for example, but it can definitely be eye-opening for people to, if you go into a gym like that, like here in, say, London, and you've got all these different backgrounds and you're just united in one goal, which is to get better at a specific technique.
Yeah, well, I think martial arts has got a weird sort of almost religious thing about it as well.
Definitely.
Anyone who does Muay Thai, the whole idea of going to Thailand to go and train in Bangkok or a Tiger Muay Thai,
dude,
or
that's a whole industry.
Yeah, that's a whole, but I think it's a whole sort of, I think it's basically a pilgrimage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? It's basically a thing where you go and you learn from the very source, which is not something you get in other sports.
You definitely don't. I mean, it's not like...
I'm sure there are other sports with it, but martial arts is really common. Taekwondo, everyone, like, it's Korean.
Yes.
Like, people know it comes from there. Judo, people go on, like, pilgrimages to the Budokai in Japan.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of these martial arts, especially the traditional martial arts, have a root in a foreign country and have a lot of gyms and things there.
Yeah.
It's interesting, even like the more modern ones, like Ju-Jitsu, obviously Japanese roots, then Brazil, but California itself is almost a pilgrimage.
But so I was watching a documentary on, it was a Henso Gracie like legacy documentary. And just before that, I watched like a little video of Henna Gracie talking about the history of Gracie, and it's because it kind of started there. It was
well, they came over from Brazil and landed in California.
Yeah, in California.
That's where it happened.
Exactly, and it was in like a garage and all that kind of stuff, and they built a community there. So it's definitely like, yeah, California is sort of the birthplace, you could say, of modern BJJ.
Yeah, I'm sure some people will hate you for saying that, but I kind of agree. Yeah.
Yeah. But then you've got like, on the same point, then you've got like Henzo's in New York.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, you've got the country and you've got these specific you've got these specific areas, but then there are specific gyms, like Henzo's in New York. And I think even outside of BJJ, I think, imagine catch wrestling was still a thing. The Snake Pit in London would be a huge pilgrimage for catch wrestling.
Yeah.
Judo definitely has that with a few specific gyms. Yeah.
I think it takes in order for a gym to become like a mecca, let's call it.
Yeah.
It does take a big amount of success, because there's a lot of, I mean, for example, in the Muay Thai world, which is where sort of I'm predominantly from, you have there are a lot of gyms, and there are definitely gyms that people know of, but to me it doesn't have the same feel as the Ju-Jitsu kind of mecca.
Do you not think
clubs?
Tiger Muay Thai is so famous?
Tiger Muay Thai, yeah.
And I think if you're talking about jiu-jitsu clubs, like fine, Danaher's is a bit different. But beyond that, could you name any specific one that's more famous? That so for Muay Thai, it's Phuket and it's Bangkok.
Yeah.
And those are the two locations. I don't think beyond Henzo's you get any more specific with jiu-jitsu than California and Rio.
Yeah.
And there aren't really any meccas beyond that.
Not really. Yeah, maybe 10th Planet. That's in California.
Maybe, yeah. No, 10th Planet, no, that's legit. Like that could be one gym. But I think it's these older martial arts that have it. And jiu-jitsu is kind of weird. Well, Brazilian jiu-jitsu is kind of weird.
Yeah.
That it's managed to create some younger ones.
Yeah, that's true, because the sort of history of, say, Muay Thai it's a longer period of time where those gyms have sort of they've had a longer period of time to become the name that they are. It's interesting, but I think I do think that the Thai boxing gyms with the sense of people going, sort of like a pilgrimage to those clubs. I mean, the reason why I said it's sort of an industry is that so many people want to do it, that it's an industry in itself, that people organize these kinds of trips just for Thai boxing holidays. And it's kind of crazy because it's a lot of money to go.
Yeah.
And you're going to be...
There's a lot of money to go halfway around the planet to do something that you could otherwise do here. There's something special about just going to Thailand and doing it there that makes it worthwhile. Because I can learn Muay Thai here.
You definitely can.
I can learn Muay Thai in Belgium.
Yes.
Holland. You can do K1 there. And it's, in terms of the sport, it's very similar, but in terms of the culture, it's very different. And there's something special about going to Thailand and having that Thai culture.
Yeah.
That
absolutely.
you don't get from training elsewhere.
And a lot of people get the tattoos as well, the sort of religious tattoos, it's like you see a lot of people, like, I remember when I was starting, I was like, I really want one of those. But then I started seeing more and more people having them, and I was like,
scrapped it.
Maybe it's not so cool anymore.
That's fair.
But yeah, it's interesting.
Well, I've always thought it's weird how... No, I'll tell you one thing that I thought was really cool, is that I've always felt like if I move to a city, or at least if I move to a town that's big enough to have a gym, I can go there and I know I'm going to be welcome with people. Yeah. Especially with jiu-jitsu. Yeah. But even in boxing, in Muay Thai, I actually feel that MMA doesn't have that.
Really? So I haven't trained much. I mean, not really. I haven't been to any MMA classes.
Well, I think maybe boxing will be well, I think actually a lot of these will be similar if you're competitive, but it's hard to go and drop into MMA clubs. People take it very seriously. It's still sort of almost like guarded, all the technique. You hear about like the old days of jiu-jitsu when people guarded the technique and they didn't let it go outside the gym. It's much more like that.
Yeah, I can see that.
I think the stakes are just a lot higher.
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of the times like MMA gyms will try and produce pro fighters.
Yeah. And jiu-jitsu is far more about like building a community.
Yeah, and it's people will compete, but it's rare that it's sole purpose of the gym. Excuse me. The sole purpose of the gym is to produce like pro athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like, yeah, that's true actually. It's an interesting point that in MMA it's less about the sort of amateur pursuit of it.
I don't know about that because it's not. It's just when you're an external person coming in. I think MMA within the gym builds a really close community because it's so goddamn hard.
Yeah.
That you build that community amongst people who you're training with. It's the difference is that I can't then go from there, go to I don't know, just I can't go to any other MMA gym in London and just slot in and feel like I'm part of the group. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. But Ju-Jitsu, I feel like I could go to any gym and be super welcome there.
Yeah, it's definitely a different vibe. I don't know what it is exactly. Why is that? But I totally agree with that.
Yeah, but I don't know why Jiu-Jitsu builds these sort of communities, whereas MMA just doesn't seem to hit that same vibe. Like I feel like I could go to any city and make a load of friends, and they would just be my friend group, which is kind of what made me feel so comfortable about moving to London. As long as I was close to a gym, I knew there were going to be a load of people who are interested in the same stuff as me. And I think Jiu-Jitsu is interesting because it's got a lot of references to stuff outside of Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
There's this whole sort of weird meme culture and people talking about acai and just stuff. You can just go anywhere and make the same weird jokes.
Yeah,
it's like
cannabis as well.
Yeah, the whole weed thing. Like I can go to any jiu-jitsu anywhere in the country, basically, and make the same weird in jokes.
Yeah,
and everyone's gonna get them.
Yeah.
It's so weird. It's such like this weird like big small community. Like it's all over, and yet everyone's into the same weird stuff.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know. Jiu-Jitsu seems a bit more chill to me as well.
Yeah,
like people are not as serious. And I don't know if that's because we're not hitting each other in the face when we're doing it.
I mean, it might be. I think a lot of the time people go into MMA and, well, mostly MMA, yeah, because they maybe not want to be professional, but it's still in the back of their mind.
Yeah,
like,
you've got it.
Like maybe.
Yeah.
People do jiu-jitsu just because it's a laugh.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people as well, it's like, it's in a way that it's like a self-defense technique, of course.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people do see merit in that, and approach it that way. For me in particular, it's like, and I think it's also the same for a lot of people, it's just like the pursuit of learning something deeply for a long period of time, because there's so much to it that you get really like, just your mind is working.
Oh, yeah. No, 100%. But, okay, tell me this. When you were doing just Muay Thai, did you find the same prevalence of people being really obsessed with it as you do with Jiu-Jitsu? Because
it's not the same.
It's not.
It's not the same. And
because
some people might disagree with this, but to me, it's not the same kind of obsession.
Right? Because what's weird about Jiu-Jitsu is that it's everyone.
Yeah.
I might know one person who's like a senior belt who's not obsessed with it. I could name one person, and everyone else just all the time, just training all the time, just talking about it all the time.
Absolutely.
And this whole sort of weird meme culture where you're just there like just not talking about jiu-jitsu amongst random friends. But Muay Thai, boxing, nothing like that.
Yeah.
Like, not even close. I don't understand why. And this is something that's really puzzled me: is why is jiu-jitsu so obsessive for so many people?
Yeah, it's true, and I mean it's true across. I've been to 2 gyms here in London now, and in both gyms, people like, I was turning up maybe like twice a week in the other gym, and I would just see people every time I would go to a different session in the same gym. They would be there doing jiu-jitsu, those same people, and it was definitely, and I think it is an obsession for people straight away. It's like, for me it is as well. Like I just can't. I just can't. I'm constantly trying to figure out how can I get to the next session, and if I'm missing the next one, I'm like, oh.
Or you're thinking about technique, or you're thinking about matches that have happened.
Jesus Christ! I mean, I'll be like, I'll wake up in the morning and I'll be like, oh shit, what did I do last night? And I'm just going in my head, like closing my eyes, going in my head,
right,
going through a technique. I never did that for Muay Thai. I don't know.
Yeah, and for some weird reason, everyone in Jiu-Jitsu is united by this same weird obsession. That's part of the whole community thing. That's part of the meme culture and the cannabis and the being obsessed with this one weird sport, which makes no sense why people are so obsessed with it when they're not being competitive. It makes sense with MMA. If you're trying to be an MMA fighter, you've got to be obsessed. You've got to be there the whole time. Yeah. You've got to be doing it whether you like it or not. And yet people do the same thing with jiu-jitsu, even though they're like, oh, it's just a laugh. It's just a hobby, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just a thing to do. And I'm like, but you're here like 6 days a week. You're destroying your knees for a hobby.
For in the same,
just because it'd be a laugh.
In the same sort of on the same wave, Muay Thai. If someone was training the same amount in Muay Thai, they're going pro, mate.
Right? Yeah,
they're going for an A-class fight, like, or at least C-class. They're going straight, like, full on.
And people in jiu-jitsu do this as a hobby.
Yeah,
mad.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I think it must have something to do with perhaps a bigger sense of community in jiu-jitsu, and maybe it's also less scary for some people.
It was definitely less scary.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing. I don't do striking for... Well, there's two parts to that. Firstly, if I don't do striking for a month, and I come back to sparring, the first thing I feel, massively anxious. I'm just there like, oh, I don't really want to do this.
Yeah.
I think it's exciting.
I
think it's really cool, but I think jiu-jitsu is fun. That's the difference. But let's be honest. Jiu-jitsu is not like exciting in the same way.
No, of course not.
I can't put on 99% of jiu-jitsu matches and show it to a random person and then be interested at all. MMA though, boxing, it's exciting.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's nerve-wracking. It's way more chill to do jiu-jitsu.
It is way more chill. I mean, yeah, by far. Even if you're a beginner and it's your first session. Another thing is, if you're a beginner and it's your first session, I mean, okay, if you're doing sparring in Thai boxing and it's, first of all, you're not going to spar in the first session. But even when you come in, you've got some experience now and you can spar. People, it's more difficult to find people that will go really easy on you.
Yeah, and that was going to be my second thing, is that I can't go to random gyms. This is, I think, coming back to the MMA thing again. Can't go to random gyms and be like, this person won't hurt me. There's always that bit in the back of your mind. You're like, don't really know what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
But you go to a jiu-jitsu gym and it's chilled. You go, oh, can I roll light? As long as you don't smash their face in with your shoulder or something, it's going to be light and you're not going to get hurt and it's all going to be good.
Yeah.
But with boxing and striking and MMA...
I think another distinction to be made there is, like, boxing is way even harder even than Thai boxing, I think.
You think?
I would say that, like, in boxing, people spar harder. Because in Muay Thai, the culture is don't spar hard.
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
Supposedly, yeah. Like, most gyms should adopt that philosophy.
Watch out you don't have that.
Yeah, sorry. The philosophy is meant to be don't spar hard because that comes directly from Thailand.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think it can be even worse for boxing, for sparring. Because to be fair, like, I don't know, places like Gymbox here in the UK, if there will be ever any US listeners, or other countries, they do have boxing classes and a lot of people go to them, but I think they do it more for the exercise part, whereas we're talking more actually sparring and being in physical contact with each other.
Yeah, well, that's another thing. I know a lot more people who do Muay Thai as a fitness thing than I know who do boxing.
I just had that in my mind as well. It's like Ju-Jitsu, you don't really do it for fitness. You will have it in your mind like, okay, I'm doing this and I'm getting fit. Yep. But like once you're in it,
yeah.
I think once you're in it, you're like, shit, this is actually so much fun. You're not going there, I'm going there to be fit, right?
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
And
I know a few people who have, but yeah, most of the time. But you think like, oh, I'm going to do boxing, I'm going to lose weight.
Yeah.
No one goes, I'm going to do jiu-jitsu to lose weight. People do jiu-jitsu because they think it'll be cool. And then they're like, oh, and it's great fitness. Yeah. And that's an aside.
Yeah.
Not the main thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've kind of pinpointed it there. What the sort of it's definitely the less of the damage potential.
There's no damage and there's no worry.
Yeah.
And it's way more chill, but that still doesn't explain why people are obsessed with it.
Yeah, that one I can't pinpoint that. Why is it?
Because it's so prevalent. There's another weird theory I've heard. I can't remember who said this. It might have been Gilly at university, or maybe Mel. But someone was saying that it might be because everyone's like basically hugging all the time. It's just a huge oxytocin rush, right? Even when you're drilling, you're still there. Just still touching people and just rolling around with them. It's probably a huge oxytocin rush, and I wonder if that's partly to do with the obsession of it.
Yeah,
you just get hooked on this thing, which you keep going back to, and you don't even know why.
Because right now, I mean, we're so lacking in human contact.
Yeah.
That perhaps there's some like subconscious thing going on.
Well, that's another thing that comes back to the whole tribe thing. The book, the guy who was on Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Do you know what he's called?
His name is Sebastian Junger.
Sebastian Junger, yeah.
I recommend the book to anyone.
Oh god, and I hope I'm not mixing up two guys who are on Jowry.
I think you're right. I think it's the same guy.
But it's kind of going back to this sort of weird tribal roots thing.
Yeah.
Where you're going in, and it's like the people who are skilled at fighting sort of get elevated, and Russell Brand has talked about this as well, because he's blue belt in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah,
right?
he's been going crazy on it,
and he talks about how there's this whole ritual at the start. Everyone comes in, you're dressed in your robes, you sort of line up. The more senior people are at the end, and more junior people down below.
Yeah,
and it's not like taekwondo or karate where it's all the bowing and the.
Yeah, there's a bit less of that.
There's a bit less of that, but it's still a whole ritualistic sort of thing.
Yeah, and
that's your little tribe, and that again is something people don't have nowadays. Even when people are exercising nowadays, people are working out in the gym or they're running, and you might make mates, but you don't have that big group of people who are doing exactly the same thing as you.
Yeah.
And I do think there are other sports that maybe don't have the Mecca thing, but do have, or maybe they do. But I'm thinking of stuff like rock climbing and bouldering. I know there's a friend of mine, Robin, who he does bouldering, and I was hanging out with all of them once. And there was definitely that same community vibe.
Yeah, I can
they're
see
all
that. Obsessed
with that same kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I guess actually, I was going to say they didn't have a Mecca thing, but they probably do some mountains and
I'm sure there's
place. I don't know, the Alps or the Himalayas. Or I don't know, the North Face. I don't know. You'll have to ask them. But they probably have their own pilgrimages.
Yeah, I'm sure they do, man. Yeah, I'm sure they do.
Because that's a really different sort of sport to
but that's it's
rock climbing and running and things like that.
Yeah.
But it's creating that sort of weird tribal thing, and it's that whole ritual and maybe the oxytocin rush, but that doesn't account for boxing and things.
Like going back to like the combat sports. When I go, when I used to train Thai boxing or whatever. For me, it never was about the community of the gym, which it might be for some people. Yeah. It was more about getting tough, and going there and doing a tough workout, feeling good about the tough workout. Whereas now with jiu-jitsu, to me, it's like, oh, I'm part of this family.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually, and I wanted to mention this as well, is because in my other gym, which I won't mention which gym, but I didn't feel I had the family vibe, and that kind of in jiu-jitsu classes.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I'm here at Grand Union,
Yeah.
the vibe is just totally different, and people are. It just feels like a family already, you know. So it's definitely something that, for me, it makes me want to train there a lot more. And it makes the experience a lot more pleasurable because, well, let's face it, it is a somewhat unpleasurable experience to be training.
It can be, yeah.
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 So yeah, it's just like, and it's the same thing with sharing techniques as well. It's like when someone taps you out or something, and the more experienced than you, they'll be like, oh, maybe be careful with putting this, arm out here or something. Rarely you get that in jiu-jitsu. In Thai boxing.
Mm-hmm.
They'll just whack you and
You
then
think?
won't tell you. A lot of the times, man, I mean, I've sparred with a lot of people. I haven't, they won't say, oh, don't, step out with this leg here, or they will do it once you're on the pads. But when you're sparring, I rarely have found like a conversation about your role, like in
Maybe,
practice.
yeah. I mean, because I've only trained at a few sort of proper, well, not even proper, a few different Muay Thai places. There was Exile, Luke Barai, and, I was never in with that little inner group, but you could tell they had their own tribal group there.
Yeah.
Dean is in charge, they're all sort of in it together, the sort of like sort of warrior culture. But it's the same thing as the MMA again. Like there's the hardcore, tight-knit group.
But it tends to be people in those gyms tend to be people that compete.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. That wasn't really the case unless it was people who are really obsessive and turning up all the time. Yeah, it was only the competitors.
Yeah.
But I don't know if because I did Muay Thai at university, my whole idea about Muay Thai has been sort of weirdly shifted. Because didn't you find there was that whole culture thing at university?
There was, yeah.
But I don't know if that was because it was a university club or if it was because of a Muay Thai club. It's kind of hard to say.
Yeah, I think that might have had more to do with the fact that it was a university club.
You think?
Yeah, because I've been around quite a few striking gyms. Like when I was younger, I used to go to different gyms to train, and when I went to Scotland as well, I trained at different gyms. Weirdly, there was a Polish Thai boxing club in Glasgow because there was a big Polish community.
Oh, right, okay.
And that felt like a family. But I think the united, how would you say that? The unity there was the fact that we were Polish.
Not because
we didn't, or maybe a little bit of both, yeah. But
yeah.
I think it was more united because of the fact that we were Polish.
Well, that's because you're sort of a load of people in a culture and an environment where you're not the sort of really common thing.
No, of course.
Do you think that's why jiu-jitsu's so culture-oriented? Or why martial arts in general might be culture-oriented? Because most people don't do boxing. Most people don't know what getting punched in the face feels like.
Yeah.
But these people doing boxing, you're in this little group. No one else around you does it. You've got your own little community.
Yeah, I think it boils down to that. I think the tribal thing.
You're different from like all of the outside world kind of thing.
And you have your own tribe. It's, when people talk about tribes, they mention a lot of the times they mention football clubs and football, and why people they pigeonhole themselves into football clubs, whereas with jiu-jitsu, it's more about the whole sport. I mean, yes, you are, you have your own club, your own family, but it's not as if you're maybe, you're always welcoming other jiu-jitsu practitioners, and it's like a wider family. But it's the same sort of idea as say in football, where Well, I guess it's not really the same.
No, because football's almost like each team against the
Yeah,
outside
it's
world.
more like
whereas
a
it's Ju-Jitsu
rivalry.
and the outside world.
Yeah, it's interesting actually that you
But
say that.
I think that's different because football is so popular
Yeah.
that almost everyone is a football fan.
Well, that's another thing. Yeah.
So how could you be football people?
You're almost just like another. It's just a generic.
That's just everyone.
Yeah,
The only way to distinguish yourself is not by being a football fan, because
Yeah.
that's everyone. The only
Yeah.
way to distinguish yourself is by being a fan of a specific team in football.
Yeah.
It's because the community is too big.
Yeah. I think the tribe that you find in martial arts and yes, in particular jiu-jitsu,
Yeah.
is something that is difficult to find elsewhere. And that's, I mean, of course, there are other places that you can find it, but, you know, it's something that really brings you in, and it definitely has to have an effect on why, or sort of is the cause of why people are so into it, so obsessed, and become so obsessed.
All right. So we've got the whole older culture of it and the history of it,
Yeah.
and these sort of pilgrimages. You got this, and that ties into the tribal aspect and the fact that people outside it aren't doing it, and the fact that you're getting this weird tribal group where you're completely separated from people's religion and their races and their jobs and their wealth, and then you're thrown into this little group together.
Yeah.
And those are sort of the things that build the whole community aspect of martial arts.
Yeah.
Plus the weird obsession with jiu-jitsu, which is something a whole nother level on.
Yeah.
And might be some oxytocin stuff, and
Maybe.
might just be people being weird.
Yeah,
Don't know-
might be.
Don't know what it is, but jiu-jitsu.
Maybe it's I don't know. It's like the problem solving part of it, but then I don't know. It's not like they're all mathematicians.
Nah, they're all just a bit weird.
Yeah.
How many people who do jiu-jitsu aren't weird? Not a lot.
Not a lot.
They're all a bit weird.
Yeah, we're all a bit weird.